All right, you've been warned. We'll get on with this. This is who we are. On the right-hand side, you can tell we've been here for about 25 years. We are based in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. And on the left side of this are the core values that this company has. This is not a Hallmark card. This is something that we had to spend a lot of time on when we got into a company that had some issues. And I can tell you that these things matter, and as we get into a couple more slides, you'll see why. But over the last 4 or 5 years, every Monday, every single person on our team gets an email from me, and the first thing they see are these core values. And this has been really the bedrock of what Galaxy has turned into. What do? We build and create table games and license that content to land-based casinos and iGaming casinos throughout the world. So why do we need to do that? Blackjack's blackjack. Well, 6-5 or 3-2 isn't very exciting for a player. And if you're an operator, a 1 or a 1.5% house edge as a casino is not great. So players are looking for a little bit more volatility. They want to be able to place a bet and get 9-1 on a side bet. Or on a progressive system, what you see with the meters rolling, they want to put down $5 and potentially win $100,000. So what do? We blend a little bit of math, we blend a little bit of psychology and marketing, and we come up with these games. And again, license them out. These games could be anything from a side bet that go on to blackjack or craps, public domain games. Or in the middle one, you'll see a game called High Card Flush, which is made from scratch, a completely different game. And at the bottom, those are progressives, which, as I mentioned earlier, would be an additional bet and meters go. And so there's life-changing events, trip-changing events, things like that. So, as I said, we've been around for about 25 years. In 2011, the company changed dramatically. We bought the assets and ended up with a game called 21 Plus 3. 21 Plus 3 is the most well-known table game in the world. Every year, we continue to make a little bit more money on it, which is not typically what you see with titles in our type of business. In and around 2015 is when things started to get a little bit interesting with Galaxy Gaming. And let's step back for a moment. The gaming industry is highly, highly, highly regulated. And that means that if you're an officer or a company, every state, tribes, and different places want to know everything about you. So as an example, Harry and I regularly give everybody all of our credit card statements, all of our bank statements for the last 10 years if we want to go get licensed somewhere. It's pretty serious. So 2015, the founder of Galaxy Gaming was found unsuitable by the state of California. And that's a problem because we then had to pull everything out of the state, but everything's kind of connected, and so other states start to look at it and say, well, what's going on over there? So that started to put some heat, and we started to have some situations in and around licenses for other parts of the country. So beginning of 2017, it's about when Harry and I started, and again, our boyish optimism, we'll get this worked out, no big deal. And by the middle part of 2017, we were in front of the Nevada Gaming Control Board, and they had the same situation. They said, okay, we like the company. We're not in love with the founder. Let's come up with a different solution. So we did. I took the CEO position. A fellow by the name of Mark Liparelli became the chairman of the board. Mark is the former head of the Nevada Gaming Control Board, so everyone knew we were taking regulatory matters very, very seriously. And 2 months later, we received our license in Nevada, and we thought, we are ready to go. Other states didn't feel that way. And so for the next bit of time, from the middle part of 2017 to May of 2019, things just got tougher and tougher, right? We were getting to a point where we still weren't getting licenses, and things were just getting more difficult with the founder. So in the gaming world, a lot of people have language that says if you have an unlicensable or uncooperative figure, you can redeem them. And on May 6, 2019, we redeemed the founder of the company. It was 58% of the company, and we redeemed it for $1.68 a share. As you can imagine, lawsuits ensued both sides. Not great. Then, within the next 6 business days, we received 3 new licenses. It was pretty obvious of this was the holdup. So we moved through with redemption. We started to get licenses the second half of the year. January of 20, we get the California license again. Big deal, right? Biggest table game market, feeling pretty good. In February of 20, we announced that we were going to buy a company called PGP, or Progressive Game Partners, which is an iGaming business. And then the very next month, we put out a press release that said, because of all the closures, we are going to stop billing our customers, and COVID hits. So we're dealing with a lawsuit with the founder, over $40 million. We are dealing with COVID, and we figured it out. And by the time of November, and trust me, there's a lot of gory details, but we only got 30 minutes, so we'll skim over that. The good news is last November, we got to an agreement, and for the face value of that note, we paid off the founder, and he went away. And so for the first time since we've been here, we're really unencumbered to do the things that we want to do. So here's what you probably want to know about us a little bit. Our business is recurring. We have, as I mentioned, very, very well-known brands. 21+3 High Card Flush is the #1 flush game. Bonus Craps is the #1 craps game out there. We have pretty healthy margins. I'll drop down to the management team. Harry and I have been doing this for a while. We think like shareholders. We are shareholders. And as I mentioned, going back up, the Net Promoter Score of 90+. Net Promoter Score basically measures the likelihood of customers to recommend or use your product again. World-class companies like Apple are in the 70s. The number that you see there right now is about 96, and that's based on over 930 surveys sent out over the last 12 months. I'm also very, very happy to announce that today we unveiled our internal NPS score with our team. We had 100% participation, and we hit 94. So going back to those core values of taking care of our customers and taking care of our people, I absolutely believe that's why we kind of endured in and accelerated out of COVID. So we have two kind of areas of our business. One, we'll talk about land-based. These are the games that you would go into a physical casino and see. So if you look up top, you would see the progressive. Those are the meters and the things that we talked about before. And then we have side bets that we create, and we would put those on public domain style games. So blackjack, craps, things like that. And then you have, as I mentioned before, games that we'll create from scratch, like poker derivatives and games like flush games. So how does it work? So let's take an example of blackjack in #1. That's a base game. The casino doesn't pay for it. We don't earn any income on it. But we can go and put a side bet on it. And again, the reason we do that, players are looking for a little bit more volatility, and casinos are looking for a little bit more house edge. Now we go in there. Most of the time we put in 2 side bets, 2 billable units. Then we add on the progressives. You put on 1 meter, that's an additional billable unit. 2 meters is 2. In most of the instances of what we're doing now, we have 2 meters on there. Then we start to add, and we just announced and showed a new piece of hardware where now we can start to gather other data and push things out. So basically what we look to do, right, is add billable items and create value for our customers, the casino customers. So this is what we do. We look at a table, how can we add billable items to it? Obligatory logos that we put on there, folks that you've seen and heard, a lot of people that you haven't, okay? So most of the folks that you see in North America are people that you see a lot of Carnival. A lot of people don't think about that. They are probably one of the largest casino groups in the world. They have a lot of ships, and they have a lot of tables on there. This is where we are. On a big blue marble, there ain't a whole lot of blue right there. This company has been very, very focused on the North American market and in the UK market. So what do we do about that? Over the last couple of 6 months or so, we've cut down our territories. We have more salespeople now in North America than we've ever had. And part of that is we have more jurisdictions than we've ever had, which means we have more customers. And so we're touching those guys more often. We have a very, very strong penetration rate in the UK. We have about 95% of all the blackjack tables in the UK. We're taking that strength now and moving out into Europe. And then recently, we took over a business of Perfect Pairs, another side bet. But these games were already installed in places like Latin America and Europe. So those are creating new opportunities for us currently. So how do we think about this business growth going forward? We are in about 1/6 or 1/7 of the world's casinos. So we want to go into more casinos. That's one of the natural drivers of what we can do. Second natural driver is we do really well in blackjack, but baccarat is another big area for us to be in. Roulette is another big area for us to be in. So another set of tables, another family of tables. And then can we add multiple billable items to those tables? So basically, as Harry likes to say, kind of a three-dimensional strategy when we think about the land-based business. iGaming. This is the one that everyone is very excited about. I guess this is the sexy one that's out there right now. This is a game, this is an area that really came to us. We were a licensee until we made that purchase of Progressive Game Partners a couple years ago. So here are a couple of examples of what we do in iGaming. Now, iGaming is going online into either states in this country that have okayed iGaming or states or countries throughout the world where you can go online and gamble. So this is real money gambling right now. So basically what you see here are three different variations of what our business is. In the lower left, that is bonus craps. And we license this directly to DraftKings, who's an operator of things. So they built this game and they went out there and put it out there. On the upper right, what you see is kind of the evolution of where we're going since we purchased PGP. So this is where we work with a developer, and then they'll go out and license this to multiple operators, the FanDuels, the BetMGMs, all of these folks, and then they'll participate in that, and we participate in something here. What's different in this model versus where we used to be, and we just license things, is that if you see here at the bottom, there's a Lucky Ladies bet. That's a billable item. There's a 21+3. That's a billable item. 21+3 progressive. This is the first game in the world that has a progressive online for blackjack. That's a billable item. And for the first time ever, because the game was built and we negotiated it a little bit differently, we make money on the base game. So a public domain game we're actually making money on. And then third, down below, which is where the majority of our business comes from, is what we call live dealer. So unlike slots, because everything has to be a graphical representation of a slot, you can actually go to a website, say I want to play live dealer, and then you get put into a studio where there's someone that is physically pulling cards. Right? So we have been in this part of the business, licensing for the last 10 years or so. But if you've heard names like Evolution, things like that, this is the company that would provide this as a third party to the names that you do know, FanDuel, DraftKings, those types of folks. So what's a little bit different, and again, obligatory slide, we know logos, we punch above our weight. What's different? In land-based, by and large, we charge a fee, flat fee. In the iGaming model, we participate in the gross gaming revenue. So what does that mean? That means that we are more alike the house than in any other model. So gross gaming revenue are the bets minus the payouts. That's gross gaming revenue, and we take a percentage of this. So what that means is that there's a little bit more volatility. Someone gets on a heater. That's not good for you. Someone, the game overholds, that is good for you. But over time, the math is your friend. So before we bought PGP, as you can see on the left there were a whole lot of layers that we were a ways away from the player, right? And we were really only taking a percentage, a very kind of small percentage of GGR. Once we bought PGP, we basically now own all of that that was shared with PGP, and we picked up some other titles that were really strong. I mentioned perfect pairs earlier. 21+3 perfect pairs, 1 and 1A when it comes into the online world. All right. Now, as we continue to move forward, as I mentioned before, we think we have more value on things. So now we look at, do we develop this product a little bit more ourselves? Do we move a little ways up the food chain to where we can have a little bit more of the economic pie? So this is a very, very misleading slide. The blue here is where we are in iGaming. We're in over 1,000 online casinos throughout the world, right? But they've been doing this for a long time over in Europe and Asia. This is what it looks like currently in the United States. All right, we basically have 5 states right now that allow online casino gambling. As of this morning, with adding Maine, they just signed a bill. There are 34 states that have sports betting now, all of a sudden. We are still big believers that sports betting is going to be the precursor for more gaming. Why is that? FanDuel, DraftKings, all these guys will tell you 5 years from now they make more money out of online gaming than they will sports betting. The margins are better. For states, the tax rates are better. I always go back to Michigan when they launched last year. In the first month, the tax revenue from sports betting was $111,000, and the tax revenue from iGaming was $4 million. So we are believers that it will continue to be a precursor out there for more. So we like where we sit in this business. This year we will do 1.2 billion bets. So to kind of break that down and put in perspective, for the 30 minutes that Harry and I will ramble on, there will be 70,000 bets placed on Galaxy product here during this conversation today. We represent 2% of the gross gaming revenue in the United States. Why that is important is that remember that the iGaming business is still 80% slots and 20% tables. And so when you take in the side bets and that value that we create for our customers, having 2% of that creation is a pretty big deal. And as I mentioned earlier, we're on about 1,000 or so games. So I will turn things over to Harry, talk about a few things. People tend to like numbers. He's the guy for that. So thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Todd. Our strategic initiatives are pretty straightforward and not very controversial. In the land-based segment, we have the three-dimensional growth strategy that Todd talked about. More casinos, more table game families, more billable units per table, and they compound on each other. It's a very significant opportunity. Outside of the traditional casino space, we want to imitate what Disney does. When Mulan becomes a popular movie, there are Mulan backpacks, Mulan pullovers, Mulan lunch buckets. And we think our game titles can be used in what we call gaming adjacent verticals like ETG, electronic table games, lottery, iLottery, and in social and what's called on-premise mobile gaming, where people take tablets and are able to wager outside of the casino premises, but in their rooms, in restaurants, in spa, etc. Finally, in the online space, we have different strategies in the U.S. from the strategy in the rest of the world. In the U.S., where blackjack is the most popular table game, we plan to dominate the blackjack side bet business. We have 5 of the top 7 blackjack side bet titles, and blackjack is the most popular table game in the U.S. In the rest of the world, we already have a very strong presence in blackjack with 21+3 and perfect pairs, as Todd described. So we have an opportunity to grow by developing side bets for the other big games up there, like roulette and baccarat, which are the most popular table games outside the United States. We've had good revenue growth prior to COVID. We grew at 19.7% on a compounded basis from 16 to 19. And it looks like we didn't get back to it in 2021, but that's an accounting issue. We now have to deduct the royalties that we pay to the other iGaming owners. And if you add those back, the number of times we registered in 21 was more than in 19. The midpoint of our guidance is 24.5 million, and that's a 21.3% increase over 21. And with the opportunities that we talked about in land-based and online, we think that's a sustainable growth rate over the near future. Revenue minus expenses is EBITDA, and we don't expect our expenses to grow at the same rate as revenue. Our largest expense category is headcount, and the future growth will require the addition of less expensive headcount. We don't need another Todd or another Harry to go into new jurisdictions and add new products. The midpoint of our guidance for 2022 is a 37% increase in EBITDA over 21. And while we're not quite ready to say that mid-30s is a sustainable EBITDA growth rate, we do think that our expenses will continue to grow less rapidly than our revenues. Since the business licenses intellectual property, we have no meaningful cost of revenues, which gives us pretty good EBITDA margins. With the exception of the COVID period, we've had EBITDA margins in the high 30s and low 40s. But the revenue growth exceeds our expense growth, and as that happens, we expect the margins to expand, and the midpoint of our 2022 guidance is touching on 50%. And while the numbers I showed here in the last few slides are pretty good, what's really compelling about this business is the free cash flow characteristics of it. These leaky buckets show cash from operations going into the bucket, where a CapEx sponge absorbs the water and the leftover cash drains out on the sides. The bucket on the left at the top is one of our competitors, and only 1.4% of their cash from operations was not absorbed by CapEx, as compared to 97% for us. Now, they got the message and changed their ways, but even in last year, only 37% of their cash from operations made it out of the bucket, compared to 96% for us. So wrapping up, we think we've got a really interesting business. We have well-known casino games that players look for and expect to see in both the brick and mortar and the online sectors. We have good growth opportunities in both of them. We've got an attractive business model that is very profitable and cash generative, and that cash generation gives us a lot of flexibility. In the near term, we'll be paying down debt, but only to a point, as a cash flowing business like ours can and should have debt as a significant component of the capital structure. And once that debt is down to a meaningful level, we have the typical uses of free cash flow, which are acquisitions, dividends, and share repurchases. So that's the story, and whatever time is remaining to us, we'd be happy to take any questions. All clear? Perfectly presented? One question? Yes?
I guess two parts of it. What part of percentage of the revenues are iGaming versus based on that? Are you seeing kind of the growth in iGaming cannibalize land-based, or is it kind of are the two growing together where people introduce games, at the moment,
So the first answer to the question, we're about 40% iGaming and 60% land-based. The second, I would not say that the online cannibalizes the brick and mortar. That was a similar question that was asked in the last gaming expansion as it went from state to state. Would it cannibalize? And it did not. And we don't see that here either.
It is additive. So you can take a look at a situation like you've had iGaming in New Jersey for a while now, and the Golden Nugget there makes more money property, but the overall pie. You just have to be like 34 states have sports betting, but taboo is less. But it's also they're looking at it as a way where they can touch and engage their players when they're not physically on the property.
So your customers are not seeing, like your land-based customers are not seeing iGaming as like a bad guy. This.
No, I would say that when you have the level of say they change the record and just get right now with that kind of absolute conversation. But overall, they see it as a so again, what they're looking at is it's just the extension of the game. Have a fair game with us, but we're not.
One more? Yes?
Yes. So Europe, the program, and where sure. Well, right now, Macau is obviously a pretty close to the spot. We haven't quite frankly thought for that market. Just in October, we released our first sample of Baccarat titles. He's put that right now. But until that time, we didn't really have a regular market product. And now it's a situation of when and if there's going to have a back on the stage. But there's opportunities in Singapore, Malaysia, other places. We just haven't been ready for it yet.
have a question for you guys. Maybe you could talk about the first mover advantage, I want to say, of the iGaming space. Whoever has a blackjack side bet, or roulette side bet, or other properties, do you think them sort of having advantages going forward?
I'd say that it becomes self-reinforcing to the extent you get traction and it's a popular game on the first and the second movers. The third mover is not going to show up and not have what is popular on the first and second. It might cost them less, but they will certainly make less in revenue and draw fewer new patrons to their websites.
Yeah, and I can add to that. I can tell you that one of the issues that here in the States that the iGaming operators are facing is that iOS, which accounts for 70% of all iGaming. I'm going to interrupt you. This is being broadcast online. And just talk about it.
Yeah, so I do think from a first mover standpoint, I think a quality, so maybe not just first mover, but a quality game that people know, there's two things. When something goes online, it's comforting if that's a game that you played for a long time in a land-based casino. You understand the game, you understand the pay table, etc. So that's the first thing. Number two, as I mentioned earlier, the business is 80% slot and 20% table games. Everybody wants to go make slot machines. Everybody wants to go make slot machines, which is great. Like, leave us alone, we're in the niche. The third level, and the thing that's a little bit kind of interesting, is that they are starting to put iOS, as I mentioned, just as I was sitting down, accounts for about 70% of all the iGaming play in the United States. And they're starting to put data caps on the apps of these operators. So what does that mean? You will now no longer have Amazon and an infinite shelf space for 1,000 slots and 200 table games. They're going to have to pick the best of the best. And so if you're in there with a progressive, and one thing I will tell you also about why I like the progressive, when we put a progressive out there, WinBet, DraftKings, BetMGM, they put 25 G's of their own money on that progressive as a seed to start it. Well, they got 25 G's of their own money. Where did they put you? Front left, right? And so as these guys are having to make decisions about their data cap on the iOS stuff, they're going to take the best of the best, right? And so if we can kind of get in there, and a lot of slot machines I call them Roman candles. They start up, they flame out. Ours are a little bit different, where we get in and we kind of build. So I do think there's a bit of those issues, not so much necessarily just first mover, but I think quality stuff. I think we are getting.
You're getting the boot.
Thank you.